All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for coming to the last session at Devox. Sorry for the delay getting started. They asked me to wait 10 minutes. So this session is about building chatbots. So let's dive in. So here's our quick agenda. We're going to talk about why bots. We're going to talk about Slack bots, Facebook Messenger bots, and Alexa. So if you're like me, I get distracted easily. And so there's always these questions that pop up in my head while I'm doing things like, what's the weather in Boston? Or what's my employee ID? Or what's my cost center? Or what's the status of this flight? Or am I eligible for a new laptop? Or what are the houses that are for sale around me? So there's all these questions as I'm working through the day that just pop up in my mind. And what bots are really enabling us to do is answer those questions within the context of the systems that we're already in. So we're in the world now where we have tons and tons of apps, but most of us spend all of our day using chat clients. How many people here use Slack and are in Slack all day long? Most of us. Yeah, that's my life too. And then I'm in Facebook Messenger all day long as well for personal conversations, and then like a whole bunch of other chat channels. So we're in these chat channels, and the thing that bots are doing is allowing us to answer those little questions that we have in the context of those chat programs. And with natural language, we can do a really good job of having interactions with bots in those chat channels. So the idea is to be able to answer those questions without switching context, to be able to stay in the context that we're in, but as those little questions pop up, be able to get answers to those questions and have interactions with smart bots that are behind those services. So there's been a lot of great AI sessions here this week, and I hope you've gotten to see some of those. AI and bots is really what's enabling some really cool interactions, and interactions beyond just the basic type of interactions that you'll see in my presentation. So I'm not going to focus on the AI piece today. There's great ways to implement AI and use it for image recognition, speech recognition, all sorts of other things. But I'm not going to be talking about how we do AI and bots. I want to first give you an overview of just how do we have a conversation with a bot? How do we create architectures and programs that allow us to do that? So our typical bot architecture is that we have some form of messaging application, and this is Slack, this is Facebook Messenger, and a host of other systems. Going back, way back in the day to IRC, bots for IRC have been around for a really long time. I remember I would hang out in an IRC channel like 15 years ago, and there was a bot that was pretending to be a human. And so the bot was actually learning what humans say to each other and how to say things to each other. And so when I first went into this IRC channel, I actually had no idea that this bot was a bot. And so this type of architecture, this has been around for a long time. But now I think where we're at with it is that it's becoming much more mainstream. So we've got our chat channels and lots of different options for those. And the architecture that's pretty much across the board for these chat channels is that they have exposed a bidirectional API for the chat channel. So you can build your service, and that service can use AI, and it can connect to other back-end services, and then use what's usually called formatters to actually interact with that channel. And so it can get notifications, outgoing notifications, and then can also post stuff into the channel. So that's our typical architecture. But for each of these different systems, there's a bot protocol. And the kind of unfortunate place that we're in with the bot world right now is that every different chat channel has a different protocol that it uses for that bidirectional communication. But luckily, for pretty much all that I know of, it's HTTP and JSON, mostly JSON. I think there are some exceptions to that. But machine-to-machine integration over HTTP. So at least we have that in common across all of them. But then there's a whole bunch of different ways that the protocols actually work. So it can be actually pretty challenging if you as a company say, all right, I want to build a bot that works in all these different places. You're essentially having to rewrite large portions of that over and over and over again because there's no standard that anyone is using for how they do this communication. But if you are in the Node.js world, there are often libraries that will help you to build this. So because of that, I'm going to be showing the code today in JavaScript. So disclaimer, the description did say Scala, so sorry. I'm going to be showing JavaScript instead, but hopefully everyone can understand it instead of only a handful of people. So hopefully that will be okay. Okay, so we've got our bot protocols, and we're going to be taking a look at those. Throughout the demonstration today, I'm going to be using an app called Dreamhouse, and this is a sample app that a colleague and I came up with. And so I want to just show you the context of what we'll be going through for the other demos. So let me show you the Dreamhouse demo real quick. So there's a bunch of different pieces of this Dreamhouse demo application, but essentially it's a real estate finder application. So if I'm looking for a house to buy, then this is a sample application that would show you how you could build all sorts of different things around that experience. So this is the web version that's actually more catered towards a mobile web application. So some of the formatting stuff is a little weird on this display, but you can see we can go in and search for properties. These are pulling up properties in Boston, and then we can go through and see pictures and information. We can favorite properties and contact a broker and that sort of thing. So this is our little sample application that we'll be using the data from this application as the example application for our bots. So I wanted to show you that. The Dreamhouse sample application and all the stuff that I'm going to be showing you is all available at dreamhouseapp.io. So if you go to that domain, you can see all the different parts of this Dreamhouse sample application and get all the source code and everything that I'm going to be showing you. So dreamhouseapp.io. Okay, so that's Dreamhouse. Let's dive into our first bot. So the first one I want to show you is Slack. So with Slack, there's a few different ways that our bots can interact with Slack. So the first is that we can actually have our service post messages into a Slack channel. So let me just hop out to my Slack channel here. So I'm in a Slack channel, and you'll see that there was this message posted here by the Dreamhouse bot, and when the price changed on one of those properties in the Dreamhouse application, the bot actually sent a message to the channel and said, hey, there was a price change. So we'll take a look at the code for how that works in a minute. Okay, so that's one way to do a Slack bot, is to have some event in your system that then posts into a Slack channel. There's a couple other ways we can do bots in Slack. So another is /commands, and /commands allow us in a channel to ask a bot for some information. So let me show you that one. So here in this channel, I can say /house. And then I can do a search for like Boston and 3-bedroom. Oh, I didn't understand that. Let's try again. House, Boston. Let's just try house, Boston. Oh, come on. Have to know what it's... Oh, search. There we go. Got to tell it to actually search. Okay, let's search Boston. So there we go. So that's now sent a request out to my bot and said, okay, search that Dreamhouse data set and get me back the houses that are for sale in Boston, and then it posts those back into the Slack channel. So all sorts of different ways that I can interact with bots through those /commands here within channels. So that's the second way that we can interact with Slack. The third way is that we can have a direct conversation with a bot. so we can actually go back and forth in a conversation with a chat bot. So let me show you that one. So this one is going to be down in direct messages. I can go to the Dream bot here, and let's ask the Dream bot for help. And so now the Dream bot has said, okay, here's the things that you can ask me. And so again, we could search for houses in Boston, or let me show you this one where we can create a case. It's now asking me some questions. Now we're having a conversation back and forth. I need help. It's a very descriptive subject. Hello. Okay, so now we've just had this little conversation back and forth, and now it said, okay, I've created a case for you. And in this case, it's created that case in Salesforce. The Dreamhouse app has a Salesforce component. We're not going to be talking about that today, but so that's where that data eventually got created in this case. Okay, so that's the third type of way we can use bots in Slack, is to have a direct conversation with the bot. Okay, so that's our Slack integration options here. And I want to dive into the code. I'll show you the URL first for that. So if you want to get the code, that's all on GitHub and in the Dreamhouse app organization. And then that one is the Dreamhouse bot Slack. So let's go take a look at some of the code here for how this actually works. So this particular one, we actually have a library in Node.js that makes it easy to do the Slack bots. And so the code here, we don't have to worry about the actual underlying JSON protocol that's being used. It's pretty easy to set up everything that we need to do our bot. So this particular, this part of the application is just used for that direct conversation. So the other parts of the first two options I showed you for Slack bot integration, those are in a different source repository. So we're just going to look at this one. Okay, so you can see that what I'm doing is I'm saying, all right, if my controller hears help, then what I'm going to do is create a reply, and the reply is going to be the text there that you saw when I typed in help. So then I said, let's create a case. So let's go down. You can see some of these other ones. You can see parameterization here. So if I did a search, and it would allow me to parameterize the search. So you see this is pretty basic. I'm not doing any AI, natural language processing in this case, but you certainly could add that into this application. Here it's just parameterized text, and not even much fuzziness on the text matching. Just parameters. Okay, so let's look at the create case one. So when it hears create case or new case, then what we're going to do is we're going to first return, say, what's the subject? So we've started this conversation. You'll see that we're using this convo.next so that it's keeping the context of this conversation around until it's completed the conversation. So then I have this ask description, and here we get the conversation responses. So we get what they entered from after we asked for the description and the user entered it. We get that response, and then here's where it actually calls out to Salesforce to actually create that case. And then it says, so that's it. Oh yeah, and then it says I created the case once it's been created. And so this is what we're actually returning from this handler, from this controller, is we're starting the conversation, and we're starting it with that ask subject, which, if we look back up here, this links together with the ask description that's down here. Okay, so that's how we would do a conversation. And again, we're not seeing the protocol for what's actually underneath this in this case, because that library provided by Node.js made it so we didn't need that. One other, let me actually show you that library so you can see that we're using BotKit here as the library in that application. So I mentioned in the architecture, the typical bot architecture will have formatters that will tell the display system, the UI that we're in, how to actually render the responses that we're giving it, or the information that we're giving it. So you can see in this case, here's where we're actually doing the format of properties. So when it listed those properties into the Slack channel, it is adding these fields to the response, and then those are being rendered by Slack. So in most of the bots that I've seen, they don't allow you, or you don't often do HTML. Usually you do like a JSON structure, and then that JSON structure gets rendered by the chat channel. So in the case of Slack, that's what we're doing, is we're giving it essentially this JSON data structure with titles and values. And then we have parameters like whether or not it's short, and those are what gets rendered like this. So this is rendering like a title, and then actually this is probably the title, and then the description there. So that's being we're giving back a JSON structure to this thing, and the formatter is creating that JSON structure, and then Slack in this case is responsible for actually figuring out how to render that. Okay, so that's our basic Slack bot with Node.js. And again, it was pretty easy to set up here. I guess I'll scroll all the way down so you can see the actual like server bootstrapping. We just create a server and run it. And that's pretty straightforward. Is there any questions on how to create Slack bots or any of the code here? Okay. All right. There is obviously for all of these going to be some authentication steps you have to go through to set things up and get them authenticated and create a bot. And so usually there's just a few setup steps that you have to walk through to like register your bot. In this case, get a token. And so we're just setting that token as an environment variable, and then it knows what to do in this case. So, okay, so that's our Slack one. Let's go on to the next one. So Messenger is a very popular chat system by Facebook, and the architecture here is very similar to what you saw with that third example in Slack. So this is a bidirectional conversation that a user can have with a bot through Messenger in Facebook. So let's go check that one out. So here I'm on messenger.com. This is like a standalone version of Facebook's Messenger system. You can also do this directly through the Facebook UI. But what I want to do is start a conversation in Messenger with my bot. So let's go to Dreamhouse is my bot. And let me actually show you that on Facebook so you can just see what that looks like. So there is a page on Facebook. So what I've done is I've created a page on Facebook, and this is called Dreamhouse. It's not a public page. It's just under development, and so currently nothing really on there. But this would be like your business page, right, is where you would create something that then you'd hook a bot to. Okay, so we've got our page, Dreamhouse, and now in Messenger we can come in here and have a conversation with this bot. So should start responding sometime. Oh, there we go. Cool. Okay, so I said help, and it said, hey, you can ask me some questions. So let's say find houses in Boston. You can see that my data set is very limited because I keep using Boston. So there we go. It's now gone out to my service, my Dreamhouse service, and done a query for houses in Boston. And then it's returned those here, and I can scroll through and see those. I can schedule visits. And I definitely, in this case, could create a conversation as well with the bot and go back and forth. But in this case, just did a simple request response. Search for some data and give it back to me. So this would obviously work just like the Slack one. It would work on the web. It would work on the mobile app. However the user wants to interact with the bot. Okay, so that's our Messenger example. Code is up on GitHub as well. But let's go take a look at that code so we can see how that works. Okay, so for this one is going to get a bit more involved because at the time that we built this, we didn't actually have a library. There may be a library now to make this easier, but things were pretty new with the Messenger bots when we wrote this. So you'll see that I'm doing things pretty manually here. I have to implement the protocol all on my own, and so I'm using Express, which is a HTTP server for Node.js, and then you'll see again I have to do some authentication. So I've set up a verify token that I got when I created that page and created an app in my developer account in Facebook. So had to do that setup. But now we are setting up JSON parsing, and then we have a post handler. So when there's a HTTP post to /webhook, then we need to parse out the payload and implement that protocol. So there's a few things that we do here. But ultimately what we're doing is we're trying to figure out what handler is going to be necessary for what the user typed in. And again, we could implement AI to do this, to make it smarter. But in this case, what we've done is we've just created a dictionary of the dialect that the user can say. And so you'll see when I typed in help, that is going to run the help handler. And when I said search Boston or whatever, I don't remember which one that was, what I typed, but it picked one of these other handlers to run based on what I'd typed in there. Okay, so that's our dictionary, and then let's go take a look at our handlers. So let's start down at the help one. That's a simple one. So here what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, I have a handler. It gives me a sender, and then I'm going to do messenger.send and return the response, which is just going to be a text response with the help text there. So that's a simple one. Let's do search. Take a look at search house. So for search house, it first responds and says, okay, it's looking for the houses for sale around you, and then it's going to, in this case, call Salesforce, find the properties that match that, and then return those properties back to Messenger. So we're sending 2 messages in a row in this case. And then you'll see that we're using a formatter again to format that data that we got back into the format for how that's going to then be rendered by Messenger. So let's take a look at that formatter. So you'll see what we're doing is we're assembling up again a JSON structure. So we're parsing out the data that we got from back from that Salesforce service with the properties in it, and then we're assembling things like images and the title and the subtitle and the buttons that are in there, and so and then returning that in the right format. And then again, it's up to Messenger to actually take that JSON structure that I've given it and then render it how it wants to render it. So it's I'm not actually writing the CSS and HTML and those sorts of things to do the rendering. Different render or different formatters here for the different things that we need to format. And this is just a transformer from my data structure to the data structure that Messenger wants. Okay, so that's our Messenger bot with our server. Again, just a simple Node.js server and calling these handlers. But in this case, a lot more manual because we didn't have a library to help us implement that protocol. Any questions about Messenger bots? Okay. Yep, go ahead.
How to make possible to ask contextual
Contextual
questions?
questions, yeah. So it would be very similar to the way that we saw it in the the Slack bot is that you would create a conversation, and we'd have to implement that part of the protocol for Messenger, but definitely possible with Messenger to have that back and forth conversation and retain the context like we did with Slack. Just that in this case, because we didn't have that library to help us, we didn't implement the conversation part of the protocol. You can see that I kind of conversationally in that search example, I am at least like sending two things, right? So there is a way to create a context object and then get the context and then be able to maintain a conversation, just like we did with the Slack one. But we'd have to implement that part of the Facebook Messenger protocol on our own because we didn't have a library to help us in this case. Does that answer that question? Cool. Yeah, go ahead. About the sender. I think that it's intentionally pretty limited. Like they don't want you to get access to a bunch of stuff, and I don't know what all the fields are that it gives you. But those come into the request headers. So when we get the request headers in the HTTP post, that's when we can actually get out the context information about the user. But I don't think they really provide us a whole lot of information about the user just for privacy reasons. So these type of Facebook Messenger bots are starting to pop up a whole lot more and more, or especially around customer service. So we're seeing a lot of companies now that when you go to their Facebook page and start chatting with them on Facebook, that they're doing some sort of initial analysis and conversation to try to figure out what the user is trying to do. Do they need help, or do they want to contact sales? So they're doing some initial vetting of the conversation with a bot and then handing it over to an actual person. So one of the interesting things about the way that Facebook Messenger works is that it allows both a bot or many bots and humans to both interact with the users. And so at any point in time, a human could go in and start actually responding to things as well and could take over from the bot. So I think they've done a good job at making that transition smooth from bot to human in their case. Other questions about the Messenger example? There's information on the Dreamhouse site about how to actually set up the Facebook parts of this, but it's just some clicking through some UIs to actually create the application and get your token and that sort of thing. So that's all in the Dreamhouse GitHub repo for this one. Okay, so that's Messenger. So now let's go on to Alexa. This is the fun one. So with Alexa, again, same architecture that we've already seen. What we're doing is everybody familiar with Alexa? Thinks that I'm talking to it because that's how it's activated. Is everybody familiar with Alexa? These cool little voice activated devices from Amazon. So this is the dot version of Alexa. And so it keeps turning on because it keeps saying Alexa. That's funny. I'm
not quite sure how to help you with that.
Yeah, thanks, Alexa. So same architecture as we've seen before. What we have is, in this case, a device that is listening to what I'm saying, and when I activate it by saying its name, then it will call my service with the information that I've given it. And so we can ask Alexa questions like, Alexa, what's the weather?
Right now in Crested Butte, it's 24 degrees with cloudy skies. Today's forecast has lots of sun, with a high of 57 degrees and a low of 22 degrees.
That's Fahrenheit, so a little chilly today. Thanks. Okay, so that's let's actually just dive into a demo. Again, the code is up here. So let's go play with Alexa. So when you set up this device, what we do is we give our application or our bot an invocation name. So the invocation name is the way that we actually are telling the device that we're going to enter a certain application. So what I've done is I've given an invocation name of Dreamhouse, So I'll show you in a second how we actually activate that. But then we define an interaction model. And so the way that Amazon has set things up is that there's kind of this declarative side that I configure some things, and then there's the programmatic side. There's my service behind this. And so in this case, what I'm doing is I'm defining some intents, and intents may have parameters. So you'll see the answer city intent has a couple different, they call them slots, but essentially it has just one parameter, which is the city, and that's of type Amazon US city. And then we have another one here, which is answer number, which is a parameter type of number, right, and changes. So you can see I've declaratively defined so the interaction model that I'm going to be using, basically the incoming stuff from the user, the incoming voice from the user. And then you'll see these sample utterances. And so now this is where I take those intents, like search houses, and I give it some actual utterance that it's going to be looking for. And so then that's how it actually starts to figure out what you're actually talking about. And they're doing some amount of natural language processing on the incoming voice to figure out how to match up what you've said with these utterances. So then what actually happens, let's go to the next screen here, is I tell Amazon the endpoint that it's going to call when it actually gets something that comes in. And so I have my app, it's up and running, in this case on Heroku, but you could run it anywhere, or you could create a Lambda on Amazon, but let's go test this thing. So we can test saying something right here. So let's do an utterance, which is, let me actually go back, because I always forget to search for houses. There we go. Okay. So let's enter an utterance. So the utterance that it's going to test with is to search for houses. So we're going to say, all right, let's ask Dreamhouse to search for houses. And then what that's doing is calling out to my service, and that's in this case running on Heroku, which is searching Salesforce, and then coming back. So in this case, I have a conversation. So what the response that comes back is it's going to then say, okay, in what city? So let's actually try it out and hope that it works. Alexa, ask Dreamhouse to search for houses.
Okay, in what city?
Boston.
How many bedrooms?
3.
Around what price?
$500,000.
Okay, here is what I found for 3 bedrooms in Boston, around $500,000. 121 Harbor Walk, Boston, $450,000. 127 Endicott Street, Boston, $450,000.
Okay, thanks. Okay, cool.
No problem.
Oh,
I'm
hey.
happy to help.
Bots are so much fun. Okay, so that's our sample application with Dreamhouse hooked up to Alexa. So let's take a look at. I need to stop saying your name. Let's take a look at some of the code for that, which is down here. Okay, so for this one, again, when we wrote this, we didn't have a library to help us with the implementing the protocol. And so in this case, we had to come up with that protocol on our own. So let's go through some of the code here. Again, we're using Express and setting up an HTTP server. And then you'll see that when I get a post to /Dreamhouse, now I'm starting to parse out the request information that I got. And then we're going to, again, set up our handlers and then be able to handle the responses. There's where we start the server up. Okay, so let's take a look at, here's where we implement the protocol. So you'll see that what I'm doing is parsing request body and getting some information out of the request. So I'm getting the intent name, I'm getting the slots, which are the parameters, and so I'm parsing that information out, and then what we're doing is we're assembling a response back so that we can tell the device what to say back to us, right? So this is just our simple little implementation of their JSON protocol for interacting with the device. And then let's take a look at our handlers. So you'll see that I've set up my handlers like search houses, and you'll see that the response is to ask a question, which is, okay, in what city? And then you'll see that then my response to that comes into answer city. And so now we can set our stage, which is, or up here actually is where we set our stage. So you'll see that this is where we're keeping track of that session. The conversation is we're telling it what the next stage to go to is. So that's how we create that correlation to the next request that comes in, which comes into the answer city. So we're saying, all right, if our stage was ask city, then what we're going to do is we're going to store the city into the session, right? And then we're going to set the stage to ask bedrooms, which sets us up for the next part of the conversation. And it asks, okay, how many bedrooms? And then when we answer with the number of bedrooms, then we ask for the price, right? And then when we answer with the price, then it goes out and does our query and eventually responds with, okay, here's what I found, and then uses a formatter again to be able to return that information. So that's really it. There's a few other things I can do in here, like ask it for changes and stuff like that. But you'll see that's a bit more manual because I had to implement the protocol on my own to talk to the device. But still pretty simple. It's all just JSON moving back and forth with requests and responses over HTTP. Okay, so any questions about the Alexa integration, code, anything on that device? Okay. I gotta stop. Yeah, sorry, I couldn't see back there. No, it does. Yeah, it does handle multiple languages. So there are some configuration parameters that we can set up in here. So you'll see that the only language that I've configured for my bot at this point is English. But yeah, we can come in and add a new language here, and then we just have to give it a new invocation name and give it the sample utterances in that language. So it's not automatic. It doesn't do translation for me. So we would have to set up each additional supported language manually. So, yeah, good question. Thanks. Any other questions? Sorry. Okay. So that. So all the code for that is, again, available on the Dreamhouse app repo. So if you go to dreamhouseapp.io, all of the code and information for how to set all this stuff up on your own. You can go down to bots and get all the code for the different bots that I showed you there. So those were the three bots that I wanted to go through. It's Facebook Messenger and Slack and Alexa. And I guess we have some time left for questions. Just any questions about bots in general or anything you've seen? Okay, all right. Well, I'll be around if you have any other questions or anything, but hope you had a great DevOps. Thanks for coming, and hope to see you again next year. Thanks.